Can you talk through the first 9 months and then even going into this year, what it's starting to look like? Because it sounds like you're experiencing this hyper growth. It just to paint a little bit of a picture for us.
Yeah, I mean, hyper growth, I think, is a good term. So certainly so for the first, I would say 8-9 months, so that first year of last year, we made it up to 7 figures. So we did. It certainly started very slow. It was a very slow start to finally get to 7 figures. I think it was because learning Facebook ads was completely new to me. I'd never done Facebook ads before, right? And it took me 6 months to really get a good feel for it and to find things. We crossed into this year. We finally made some discoveries. I think you call it a super ad. We discovered our super ad.
Yeah.
Once we crossed into the new year, and once we found that, then it really accelerated. And certainly we're doing 7 figures a month now, and we'll be doing 8 figures this year.
Everybody, I have Alex Neist with Hostage Tape here. And I'm super excited to have Alex on because, first of all, the product is really cool. I've been using it for over a week now. And the other reason is I have seen so much of Alex ads in my face for so long now until the universe just aligned us to finally meet each other. So Alex, man, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I started watching your pod probably about a few months ago. And so I started to pay attention to you. And I really love just your approach to the analytical side of marketing and not using emotion, but using the data. And so that's what really drew me to you for sure.
Cool. Well, awesome. I'm glad you're listening to the podcast, and now we're here.
Absolutely.
And it's really cool because Alex and I had the opportunity to hop on and do some one-on-one stuff just to meet each other a few weeks ago, and to talk on a higher level with an advertiser like you and your team is really exciting. That's what I kind of geek out on. So today, what I do want to do is, before we kind of dive into this, and I have a lot of different things I want to talk about that I think are going to help a lot of people here. But if I'm listening right now and I hear the word hostage tape, that usually doesn't ring a good bell because hostage situations usually aren't good. So could you just explain to us, like, what is hostage tape?
Yeah, you got it. So certainly when you hear hostage tape, most people are like, what the heck is that? And it can create one of two reactions. People either love it or they hate it, right? So what hostage tape is, it is mouth tape. And what mouth tape does, it's designed to keep our mouth shut. So when we sleep, we can get better sleep because then we're breathing through our nose. And so it's a super simple, non-invasive way just to get amazing sleep. And what's amazing is, as you go to our site and you look at the testimonials, and you'll see so many people talk about how this was life-changing, right? Just a simple little piece of tape was life-changing. So why hostage tape? So there's a double-sided coin to why we called it hostage tape. First is the obvious. When you put tape on your mouth, you look like you're being held hostage. So a funny little story was when I first discovered mouth taping, I used to warn people around me. I would warn my wife. I would warn my kids, anybody that was sleeping next to me. And I would say, hey, I'm going to warn you. I'm going to put some tape on my mouth. It looks like I'm being held hostage. So don't freak out. So that's the obvious. It's the first one. But the second one is that we're tapping into this core emotion that people are feeling. People feel held hostage by their poor sleep or by their partner, and they don't know what to do, right? So you're feeling held hostage, right? And you don't know what to do. You feel hopeless. So you don't want to let poor sleep hold you hostage. So it's that double-sided idea. And at the end of the day, we really wanted to lean into this kind of anti-marketing, very similar to Liquid Death, right? We're going to take this direction. We're going to get your attention. Because look, marketing is all about attention, right? And there's so many marketers out there, especially on Facebook, which is our primary channel, that how do you get people to stop, pay attention, and to click? And so we felt hostage tape was this perfect lightning in a bottle moment of, I think we've got all the elements that we need to get people's attention, to start a conversation. People are they're either going to love it or they're going to hate it. And that's okay, right? I think a great brand has that polarity to it, that you draw in those perfect customers, or you're going to repel the people that you don't want as your customers.
Yeah. When I first saw it and I first saw it and then I saw it and then I saw it and I saw it. So whatever you're doing, you're hitting me a lot. But when I first saw it, of course, as a marketer, my mind is going to the branding element of it and the stickiness of it. And it's such a scroll stopper. Like even just the name, like when you're scrolling down, aside from obviously the creative stop the scroll, but like you just look at the name, you see hostage tape. So I never knew you had that double meaning to it. But I think that's cool because there is the branding component that is very memorable in scroll stopping, but there's also the mission behind it too, that like we often feel held hostage by our poor sleep, and this can really help with that. So that's brilliant branding. So you're saying before, because I know you played football before.
Well, I don't know what gave you that idea.
Yeah. Other than the jersey, I didn't play any sports. I'm like the least sporty guy I know. I was always the tech and music nerd. So I don't know what foosball you played. But were you taping your mouth back then too?
So that's what's so interesting about this is, okay, so yes, I was a football player. I've been a high level athlete my entire life, right? I made it all the way up when I played a level of pro football called arena football. For anybody who knows anything about football, I wanted to be the next Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner was famous for stocking shelves at Hy-Vee, and then he made it into the Arena Football League and then eventually became the quarterback for the Rams and is now a Hall of Famer. I wanted to be that guy because I wasn't good enough to get drafted to make it to the NFL. So I had to work my way up. And so that's my background is a football player, but I was also a tech nerd. I was that guy in school who, I was an athlete, but I was also friends with all the nerds. I was actually, one of my favorite classes was computer science. And another funny story was when I was a kid, probably like 15, 16, my favorite class was computer science. And I used to, so they would give us assignments on a program to write. And so I used to write all these programs, these different, like a POS storefront. I created a scheduler for football that kept track of scores and all this stuff. And my teacher would get it and he would look at it and go, "You've got to be cheating." I know he was thinking, you must be cheating. He would go, "Okay, Alex, looks fantastic. Why don't you go up in front of the class and explain it all to us?" Like he was going to catch me. And then I would go up like, "Awesome, sweet." So I'd go up there and I would run through the whole thing. And the whole class was like, I don't understand any of this. And so it just kind of came natural that I was very much of a tech geek behind the scenes, yet I was also the quarterback of the football team. And really that's just kind of the foundation of who I've become now, right? My athletic background, so to go back to your question about mouth taping. Okay. So being a high level athlete my entire life, I'm in my 40s now. They never taught us anything about the importance of nose breathing, which just blew me away. So when I discovered it, I really discovered the idea of mouth taping when I was going through a personal journey. And I discovered this article written by James Nestor, who wrote a best-selling book called Breath. If you haven't read it, got to read it. And he talked about this experiment where he went to Stanford Medical Center and they plugged their nose for 10 days. And over the course of those 10 days, they developed snoring, sleep apnea, just awful stuff that doctors at Stanford were recording, as well as getting their anecdotal experiences. And so then when they unplugged the nose and they were then nasal breathing, they would tape their mouths at night. It completely solved it and fixed it for them. And that was when the light bulb went off and I went, mouth breathing. How am I a 40-year-old guy that was a high-level athlete most of my life, and I never knew anything about mouth breathing and nose breathing? And so that sent me down this rabbit hole of, okay, I got to try this out. So when I mouth taped for the first night, I woke up, I felt like a teenager again. I could not believe how amazing I felt, because when you have poor sleep and it stacks, it gets worse and worse and worse. And then when you finally get great sleep, it's quite jarring. And so that experience being an athlete in Western culture was pretty amazing. That this is something we've lost, I think, in this in this part of the world, this idea of breathing correctly, using our nose and keeping our mouth shut.
You know, as you're talking, I'm subconsciously starting to breathe through my nose just listening to this.
Right.
Because I'm a mouth breather. And it was the first time I tape my mouth. I think I messaged you on Instagram. I was like, well, last night I tried it for the first time. I think I almost died, but that was just in my mind.
It's very,
it's very
totally,
interesting.
Yeah. Everybody that does it, even I did it. I had a reaction of like, oh my God, like you feel very anxious doing it for the first time because you wonder, oh my God, am I going to die? Like everybody has that thought, right? But newsflash, nobody's ever died from mouth taping because it's actually not dangerous, right? We were designed to breathe through our nose. Mm-hmm. But yeah, man, you had the same reaction everybody has. And then once you get over that, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Wow, I actually breathe really, really well. And I had a really great sleep.
Something I would add that I noticed is because I've only been doing this for like a week and a half or so. And something that's kind of interesting to me is like now I'm like, oh, now I can tape my mouth. It's kind of fun. So I have to have all my conversation with my wife, Kelsey, before I put the tape on at the end of the night. And then I'm like, all right, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And I tape it up. But it's interesting when you wake up, you're just breathing like really nicely through your nose. It's almost like it clears a path or your whole body just adjusts to it. And it's like you feel like you're breathing better through your nose than you've ever breathed before through your nose, or at least I do because I'm like a mouth breather. Yeah. It's an interesting experience. But overall with Hostage Tape though, you're a pretty new company. When did you? Very new. When did you launch officially?
Yeah, we launched in March of last year. So we've only been around for a year and a month or 2 months now, right? Because we're in May. And so but this is my second company. So certainly I started this company from a lot of experience. So I'm an entrepreneur by trade. And my first company was a 16-year, it was a sports video analytics company. So it was a B2B software SaaS company. And so getting into e-commerce was a whole nother like ball of wax for me. But I know for a while, it was always something that was kind of nagging at me that I see all these guys, they're doing e-commerce. And when you're on the outside looking in, it looks so easy. It looks like you're just printing money, right? Just cash flow coming in every single day. And obviously, most of us who are business owners, we know, okay, it's not that easy. But there is something to if you can really understand e-commerce, how it works, how to leverage it, how to push the right buttons, it can be pretty easy. It can be pretty easy to create a successful e-commerce business if you know how to do it right. And I think for me, it just came pretty naturally because I had so many years of experience of failing and learning and just going through all that now I could translate all that experience into this new venture. And it just came to me pretty easily.
So if you're okay with it, could you maybe share with us like the first 9 months of last year, 2022, right? Can you share with us like maybe some high level numbers or figures like first 9 months versus, because I know you've been blowing up just from what I've seen and I can't not see your ads and everything. And so can you talk through the first 9 months and then even going into this year, what it's starting to look like? Because it sounds like you're experiencing this hyper growth. It just to paint a little bit of a picture for us.
Yeah, I mean, hyper growth, I think is a good term. So certainly for the first, I would say 8-9 months. So that first year of last year, we made it up to 7 figures. So we did. It certainly started very slow. It was a very slow start to finally get to 7 figures. I think it was because learning Facebook ads was completely new to me. I'd never done Facebook ads before, right? But I knew for me that was something I wanted to learn how to do because it was such a large amount of money and it was such a valuable skill that I didn't want to farm it out. So we scaled up to that. So
you've done this in-house the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Me. Yeah.
Hold on, I got to pause real fast because I think everybody listening or watching needs to take note of this. This is one of the most high value, high leverage skills you can have in e-commerce. New customer acquisition through a paid channel. It's the same thing as why in B2B, like sales is one of the last roles you outsource because it's so high value for the founder and their close rate is usually higher. I think new customer acquisition with paid advertising is like that. And you've been able to in-house this, and that's very impressive to this point. All right.
Yeah.
Back at it. I just had to throw that in there because that aligns with my belief.
Absolutely. It's because I think from my point of view, certainly like I'm wired that way though. If there's something that's super valuable and it's got a high return that I know, okay, this moves the needle, that's what I need to spend my time on. Right. And that's something certainly your audience can learn is as an entrepreneur and a business owner, spend your time on the things that move the needle. And then you outsource or you delegate the small things that don't move the needle. And your Facebook ads move the needle. It's probably one of the biggest things for most of us that move the needle. So I knew I'm going to learn how to do this. I'm going to get my hands dirty. And it took me 6 months to really get a good feel for it and to find things, to find a groove of how things start to work. And so then once we crossed into this year, we finally made some discoveries. I think you call it a super ad. We discovered our super ad.
Yeah.
Once we crossed into the new year. And once we found that, then it really accelerated. And certainly we're doing 7 figures a month now, and we'll be doing 8 figures this year.
Wow. That's amazing. And just because I have to plug another podcast here, they kind of led to that. So you found, I call them super ads. We call the ad lab method that we do it, but it's actually based on Matt Harward, who is, I think, episode like 19 or something, who has spent a lot of money on Facebook, and he calls it rapid experimentation. So did you guys follow that to find some of those ads, or a hybrid, or like, what did that look like?
So here's what's funny. I found you because of that episode. So when we were scaling, a really important part of this whole story is some of you guys know, when you're scaling Facebook and you start spending more and more and more, you start running into challenges of diminishing returns. Once you get to a point, either diminishing returns or you just need to tweak how you're running things or how you're doing it so you're getting more efficiencies out of it, right? Because certainly, kind of naturally, the more you spend in Facebook, the less efficient it kind of gets, the more expensive CPA gets. That is pretty normal. And so I was getting up to this level where, okay, I can't find anybody out there that is spending this much money on Facebook that I can learn from. Because everywhere you go, it's here's how to run Facebook ads. Here's how to get started. Like, well, I don't need that. I need somebody who's spending 6 figures, 7 figures a month on Facebook. What are they doing? What are they seeing? What can I learn from them? And so the more digging that I did, I found your episode with Matt, and I was like, ooh, like I couldn't believe it. So I dug into all the episodes you have with him and really pulled out a ton of amazing things just from testing, from some of the strategies of some of the campaign setups and things that you guys talked about that were just fantastic. So there's a ton of things that I learned from you and Matt on those episodes for sure.
So last year you said you did 7, and now you're at 7 figures a month, trending toward 8 for the year. If we're just talking about that, so when was that moment that things just like took off? Was it in, I think you said January that you found the ad, or was it before that, even last year?
Yeah. So I would say January was the accelerator, because that was when we discovered the super ad formula, right? That was when we discovered, I mean, quite simply, it's really this. So for the first almost, 8 months, we weren't using video. As funny, as crazy as that sounds, we weren't using video ads, because every time we tried, it didn't work. And we couldn't find the right recipe. And what's interesting about that is my co-founder, Ben, he's our creative, right? So that was another key, that when we started this company, I knew that the media, the content that we created was absolutely paramount. It was a huge part of the key of what we were doing. And, Gary Vee talks about this all the time, right? Content. Everything about marketing and that you do and what you're doing has to be content driven. And so Ben was my founder, and he's a creative. He does all of our content, and we just couldn't find it. We couldn't figure it out. We couldn't find the right lane for it. So then when we started doing some podcasts, and so we sponsor a couple of pods, really well-known influencers in the fitness industry. And so we got to go on their pod, and we took some clips from the pod, and then we mashed them up, very TikTok reel style. Mm-hmm. Once we did that, and it did really good organically. So here's another really important point that we learned was we put 5 pieces of content out on social on every platform every day. It's very Gary Vee style of we're going to put as much content out on every platform, but we stagger it. So we have 5, but we're staggering which 5 we're putting on Instagram and then on Facebook and then on Twitter. So you kind of get the illusion that there's a ton more content than maybe there really is, right? Mm-hmm. So when we put that content on our social, we then see, all right, what does well? And then whatever is doing well, then we take it and then we put it into ads. And that was what we learned in January that we didn't know before, because again, we just hadn't found the video recipe for us yet. So when that video hit on, and in fact, it went viral on TikTok. It got like 3 million views on TikTok. And I went, oh, okay. We've got a recipe here with that video. Let's go ahead and run it in Facebook. So we ran it into Facebook, and it took off. And that's when now I knew exactly the kind of style of video that we needed to start running. And then now we've got, as you've seen, all sorts of variations of different video that we've been playing with.
So what was the threshold, just if you don't mind me asking, Facebook ad spend before you figured out the ad formula that allowed you to actually tier up and really get traction? What do you think you got stuck at without the super ads?
Oh boy, I would say we were probably spending, man, it seems so long ago. Like when you're spending, 6-7 figures a month in Facebook. Like I can't even remember those days. They seem so long ago.
But I mean, let's go back to your roots, Alex. We just have to go back to the roots of January.
We were probably spending, $1,000, $2,000 a day, and it was just all static. We were just using static images that we created. Our primary go-to was static images with testimonials. So we would take testimonials, we would put them on a static image along with like a picture of like a side profile of a guy wearing tape, so that it still got people to go, what the heck is that? And then it showed the benefits of somebody talking about it. And so that worked really well for us, but it wasn't producing the ROAS and the CPAs that we're getting now. Like we're getting at least half, right, of the CPA that we were getting before, and then at least twice the ROAS we're now compared to previously.
Wow, that's amazing. And what did that allow you to maybe expand a little bit to per day? Just you're getting stuck at 1 or 2K a day.
Yeah,
lower ROAS, worse CPAs, and it's okay if you don't want to share that. I'm cool with that too. I don't want to.
So no, I'm happy to share it. I love talking about this stuff. So we slowly started to go from 2K to 5K to 10K, and I started to stack CBOs and just say, all right, because my whole goal when I scaled was stability. I'm like, all right, I've had so much bad experience in the past from every time you get a winner and you go, oh sweet, I'm going to scale it, and you add budget to it, they always fail. They always end up failing. And so my strategy was I'm going to start stacking CBOs in chunks of like 2,500 or for 5,000 a day. So that was how I originally scaled. I went from like 5, then to 10, then to 15, and then we got up to 30K a day. And that 30K a day was where we found a ceiling. Where once we got past 30, once we got past 30K a day, then everything. It's not like we couldn't acquire customers. I mean, there were days where I spent 60K a day.
Wow.
Like we acquired a ton of customers, but my ROAS, my CPA were twice as expensive as what they should be. So,
yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. You can spend is one barometer, but you also have to look at the other indicators of overall advertising costs of, say, what's the percentage of ad spend to revenue, and then also the ROAS, CPAs, and so forth.
Well,
I will just
and you could argue too. So I think another thing to point out to the audience is another thing that's really important here is we're a recurring purchase business, right? Certainly we have a subscription where people can buy a subscription and they're constantly getting new tape every month or they're buying bulk, but it's a single use product they're using every single day. So we're fortunate in the sense that I know that they're going to keep coming back and they're going to keep buying. So I can afford to lose money up front, right? And not be so focused on, I have to have a 3-4 ROAS on the first purchase. Like, I don't need it.
Yeah.
Right? I don't need to have that because I know what my LTV is. So as long as I can balance that CPA to a point where, okay, this isn't so bad, right? And I've still got enough cash flow coming in that I can buy inventory and I pay for the Facebook ads and then keep moving and then start stacking the repurchase, where then, we're in a really good cash flow position.
Yeah. I bet regarding inventory, forecasting that became let's talk about that. How challenging is forecasting inventory in like a hyper growth situation like this? Like when you first launched and then you got it to click, let's say even in January, like your inventory this March versus last March probably looks very, very different.
It's very different. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, we do 30,000 orders a month right now, but it was certainly challenging for that first January, February. We sold out twice so far this year, twice. Wow. And I can't say that it's something I'm totally proud of. I mean, it's cool that we sold out. We have a lot of demand for the product. People love the product and it's changing a lot of lives. But from an operations standpoint, like I want to keep product in and keep selling and keep cash flow coming in, right? I want cash flow to keep moving. And so, but the forecasting for me is actually pretty easy because for me, I'm very much a numbers geek. And so what I do is I use a P&L, an Excel P&L that before I even started the business, I build the entire model in an Excel P&L spreadsheet. And I have it on my computer in front of me every day. So as I make decisions, I always know what decision, what budget is going to cascade and affect something else. So when I make decisions on scaling Facebook up or down or what we need to do, I know what that's going to look like and how that's going to affect 3, 4, 5 months from now, because I have it all modeled out. And then as we get through each month, I then update the last month. So then everything up to that point is the actual numbers. And then the more months we have, the more that I can take those trends and go, okay, this is what this looked like. This is what a repurchase rate looked like last month. So then I can better forecast what that looks like. Because what's really challenging is once you scale up from $50K a month to then actually making 7 figures a month, then you go, okay, what's the repurchase rate going to be now? Because it may not scale the same way that it did when you were not pushing as much product. And so that was probably the biggest variable that we didn't know that probably affected some of our stockouts that we had early on. Okay. But then now that we're much more consistent in doing the volume that we're doing, it's actually pretty easy. It's pretty easy. And we only do what I call just-in-time inventory. So I don't like to dump a bunch of capital into inventory that's 6 months out. Because the argument there is, okay, if you're shipping it in from overseas, you can either express it via air or you can get it on freight via boat. Ours is a really small, light product, so we can fortunately do it by air. And it's inexpensive enough that for me, I would rather pay a little bit extra and then just pay for the next month or so. And so we actually order product on a weekly basis. So I've got a cadence of, we're getting 20 to 40,000 units every week shipped in.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. And as you're kind of through this growth, let me ask this: what's your team size right now versus like when you launched? Was it just you and your partner when you launched, or did you have anyone else?
When we launched, it was just my partner and I.
Okay.
And I was certainly running all the business side of it and the ads, and then he was in charge of all of the creative and the branding. Okay. And now I think we're about 12 people with a handful of like extra, like kind of like part-time people. So yeah.
It was such a lean team for like the gross that you guys are doing. Like, I love how lean you are. That's really awesome. How do you, like, as you've grown through these really fast paces, I could only assume, I'm not in this experience like you are right now on that plane, but like, as you're going through such fast growth, I feel like you would have to be growing as a leader, and you would have to be changing things about how you view things and how you operate. So, like, how did you have to change, do you feel, in the last year to be able to raise your lid as the lid of the business continues to raise?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's certainly a challenge that every entrepreneur goes through that scales, and sometimes they handle it well, sometimes they don't. So I think for me, I have to start looking at, because I'm at that point, that inflection point right now where I'm going, okay, as I'm building the team, I'm bringing people in, I'm making a point to try to bring in the right people early, because I think it's really important to have the right kind of people that you're building the foundation with that really fit the culture that you want to build, that you all get along really, really well. And because then that again sets the foundation for as you bring more and more people on, right? So with that being said, I'm now learning how to make sure that everybody's trained up on what they need to do, how they need to do it, so then I can step back and delegate so that I'm not the bottleneck. So right now, my entire line of thought is, all right, who do we need to bring in so that I'm not the bottleneck anymore? Because obviously I do everything, right? I could do everything, but I shouldn't be doing everything. I shouldn't be doing the social posts. I shouldn't be managing the Facebook ads. I shouldn't be doing all these things. We need somebody there to manage all these pieces so that if I got sick and couldn't work for a week, the business doesn't stop and it keeps going and everybody knows what to do, right? So then as I transition into that, then it's making sure that I'm taking care of everybody. My mindset isn't just in the grind of doing all this stuff. It's actually now shifting towards my team and then making sure that my team has everything that they need to do, everything they need to be able to do their job. And then also trying to give them hope, trying to give them encouragement, trying to give them everything they need to see exactly where we're going, that vision, to keep rowing the boat, right? And to keep going where we have to go. So giving them that motivation.
Well, you're definitely doing something right, Alex, because I don't think growth is just accidental, especially after 16 years of grinding in the previous business. So this is a 16-year, 1 year great success, overnight, over year success you've been putting in here, man. It inspires me. Like when I first met you and I'm talking to you about this stuff, it inspires me. And then I'm telling our team, man, maybe we need to start an e-commerce brand and maybe it's something else. We'll tape our ears or something. But I do have, so I'd love to close out. I have 4 questions that I want to ask you. I'm going to call it my final 4 questions, if that's all right. And you can answer these rapid fire if you want, but these are just things that I'm curious that are more selfish questions than anything. The first one is, what's your top new customer acquisition channel?
Facebook, hands down. Not even
Facebook.
Close. Yep.
What would you say your second is?
Google.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. What is something that you wish you did sooner in the last year?
I wish we would have found our super ad sooner.
Okay. Oh, this is going to be a great. Dylan, cut this snippet out so we can use this as a plug for our next boot camp. Okay. What do you think your biggest marketing mistake was?
Biggest marketing mistake? Probably. Man.
Like, did you do anything that just completely bombed and you're like, I would not do that again?
I mean, there were a few things with Google early on that bombed. Like, Google is one of those things where it doesn't hit right away. It just takes time. It takes time to build and build and build. And I didn't set it up very well right away. And so I created a couple of campaigns. I thought, like, all right, these are good. They're sweet. And then I cranked up the budget on them. And they spent a ton of money and like nothing happened. So I was like, oof, okay, turn it off. Because I thought it might help, but I didn't really know what I was doing early on with Google Ads, because it's so different than doing Facebook.
Do you find that Google is like, what's the stability you feel in Google versus Facebook? Because I've heard people say that Google feels more stable than Facebook, but it just kind of varies.
It's definitely very stable. If you have a good structure, if you have a good account structure and you've got good campaigns, it's very stable. Where we ran into trouble with, and maybe some people do too, is the merchant center. Every so often Google will change their policies. And then if you're not on the ball, sometimes those policy changes will cause your product to become not authorized anymore. And so we've run into that a few times where policy changed, our product wasn't available in the Google Merchant Center. So then our PMAX shut down, and then we're like, what's going on? And we didn't even know. So things like that. But if you're up to date on all the policies and everything is good, then, and you have a good account structure and you've got, your good base and you've got a good amount of data, good amount of conversions in there, and it knows what to find, then that baby can definitely just continue to work for it, and you don't have to do much to it.
That's amazing. PMAX is definitely, I'm hoping Facebook eventually, maybe the shopping ads, Advantage Plus shopping. I've seen PMAX. What'd you say?
I think ASC, Advantage Shopping, is their PMAX for sure.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to continue, if it'll stabilize. Like some of the PMAX stuff we've seen is just insane return on ad spend and insane CPAs in a good way. But that's awesome. And last question, what's the most impactful book that you've read recently?
Not a question. It's Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
Yep. Chris Voss. Yes. Okay.
That book,
I love it.
That's a book that I make all of my employees read. And it is one of the most life-changing books. It's not even a book about just negotiating. It's a book about life. It's about how to have difficult conversations with anybody, your spouse, your partner, your boss, like whatever it might be. It's applicable in so many different ways. And
I would never expect a different book recommendation than this from hostagetape.com, because
kind of ironic, isn't it?
If nobody knows the Chris Voss Never Split the Difference book, it's a wonderful book. And so Chris Voss was an FBI hostage negotiator. So that's why I'm laughing here, because I'm like, of course.
I actually reached out to him and I said, hey, Chris, your book has been so transformational for me. I want you to be a face of the brand someday. And I even made a little video that I put him in it. And I said, here's a little snippet, a little video that you can see of what it might look like.
I follow him on Instagram. He has great stuff. And I will say, my experience, I've only read it once. I haven't read it multiple times like other books I've read, like Profit First, Mike Michalowicz. I love his stuff. But like Never Split the Difference. The things that one of the things I took away from it, and I use this all the time to the point now where my wife Kelsey's like, wait a second, I know what you're doing now, is he teaches this. Me? Yeah. Or he'll do he does this thing, and I forget what he said, but I will go like, hey, listen, I'm a jerk. I forgot about this. And when you say I'm a jerk, the other person, their first instinct is, no, you're not a jerk. Like, it's normal. It happens, And so like, I start to like pull in some of these things from Never Split the Difference, but you got to do it with good, because you could really start to use it for evil, I guess, if you wanted.
It's an amazing tactic, and it's amazing. There's some amazing strategies that you just have. They feel weird at first when you use them, but then once you get over it, they're just so powerful in a good way.
Yeah. It helps open conversation, which is really amazing. Awesome. Well, Alex, man, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. Thank you for being on here. I hope anybody listening got something out of this. I know I did. I have a ton of notes here. I do want to close with my takeaways from this, if that's okay. And then Alex, you can add any takeaways you want to this. But everybody listening, here's the 1, 2, 3, 4 takeaways I have from this. Number 1, tape your mouth. That's the first takeaway. That was from the very beginning, if you all remember. The second one is you need to spend times on things that move the needle. Like Facebook ads is one of those things, and advertising, new customer acquisition are things that move the needle, and you have to improve your skills in those areas. The third thing I have is use and test video often, because you might just be a super ad away from unlocking hyper growth in your business. And the last thing I have here, Alex, my takeaway was you need to find the right people early, because that team is very important to the growth of your company. Anything you want to add to that?
Those are some great points. The last thing I would say is don't let bad sleep hold you hostage.
I love it. Well, we're going to go ahead and close on that, everybody. Thank you for joining us here. Alex, Dylan, myself, and our team appreciate you listening to this podcast produced by the legendary Dylan Counts. If you're an e-commerce business owner and you want to join the Ecommerce Alley Facebook group, go to alleypodcast.com/group. You'll be able to join it there, and we'll see you in the next episode.